Imagine that everything you know about the British monarchy is just the surface of something much bigger. What if the symbols, rituals, and scandals that came up over the centuries were only pieces of a carefully assembled puzzle to hide a much deeper secret? What happens behind the closed doors of Balmoral? Why are certain royal ceremonies never televised? And what was actually at stake when figures like Princess Diana, Lord Mountbatten, and even British politicians mysteriously fell in disgrace? The truth can be darker than you think, and once you see it, there is no turning back. Prepare, because what you are about to find out can change everything you believed about power, influence, and global control. On a silent and cold night, an unexpected invitation reaches the hands of Alexander Bass, a renowned researcher of secret societies and historical artifacts. The invitation, discreet and without great explanation, offers him a unique opportunity to investigate Balmoral, one of the most enigmatic castles of the British monarchy. Balmoral has always been known as a private refuge from the royal family, a distant place from the eyes of the public and the press, where confidential meetings occur without official records. Not knowing exactly what to expect, Alexander accepts the call. However, what seemed to be just a trip to examine historical files soon turns into something much larger. On the first night, an envelope sealed with strange symbols comes mysteriously before him. The seal, with enigmatic standards and an unknown symbolism, arouses its curiosity. When opening the envelope, Alexander faces documents that, at first glance, make no sense. These are excerpts of old texts, complex diagrams, and references to seemingly disconnected historical events. Intrigued, he decides to deepen his analysis and, over time, realizes that everything is interconnected. What seemed like a simple study of the royal family genealogy proves to be a much larger puzzle, a plot that refers to hidden forces that transcend the monarchy itself. An invisible entity or organization manipulating the destinations not only of kings and queens, but of the history of humanity itself. However, not everything will be so simple. From the moment he puts his hands on these documents, Alexander feels that he crossed a dangerous line. The environment around it changes, the air looks heavier, and the empty corridors of the library where they are gaining a disturbing silence. When passos begin to echo in the hallway, slowly and deliberately approaching, he understands that there are more people involved in this story, and that his presence there may not be welcome. Balmoral's discovery will not be just an academic or historical issue. What Alexander has found can change everything the world believes to know about power, monarchy, and the forces that govern the scenes of the planet. Now he needs to decide whether to move on and reveals the truth, or if it is too late. After the mysterious discovery of the sealed envelope, Alexander Graves realizes that there is something much larger behind the documents given to him. His research leads him to a private library in Edinburgh, where a rare and little-known manuscript awaits to be analyzed. The text, of ancient handwriting and worn out of time, seems at first glance only a genealogical documentation of the British royal family. However, by studying it more carefully, he realizes that there is something hidden there, algo who escaped the eyes of historians for centuries. Records not only narrate the real lineage, but hide a pattern. Codes subtly inserted over the centuries, transmitted from generation to generation. Each king, every queen, and each coronation ceremony follow a meticulously planned script. But why? What is so important in these rituals? The first track comes from the royal family's own coat of arms. Traditionally, it is believed that the lion represents strength and unicorn, purity and nobility. However, according to the annotations of the manuscript, the unicorn would not symbolize royalty, but the sacrifice, a mythological entity that, instead of representing a prosperous kingdom, hides a much darker meaning. Another unsettling discovery relates to the precious stones in the royal crown. They are not just there as symbols of wealth or status, but follow a precise pattern. Each stone, each arrangement, seems to be aligned with specific constellations and crucial historical events, as if royalty used astronomical and ritualistic knowledge to ensure its mastery over time and history. But what really scares Alexander are the details of the coronation ceremonies. Everyone knows that the coronation of a new monarch is a grand and televised event to the whole world. However, There is a part of this ritual that has never been transmitted, the sacred anointing of the king or queen. This moment, held at closed doors and away from the cameras, remains wrapped in mystery. If the British monarchy has always presented itself as a transparent institution, why does this specific moment need to be kept secret? What really happens in this part of the ceremony that cannot be shown to the public? The search for answers makes Alexander realize that he is dealing with something much older and structured than he imagined. British royalty is not just a rule of rulers. She seems to be the guardian of a secret knowledge, transmitted through symbols and rituals that few dared to question. But is he ready to continue investigating? After all, those who discover too much often do not have a chance to reveal what they know. Determining each track to the end, Alexander Basses accepts an invitation that few would have the opportunity and the courage to accept. Exclusive access to the historical archives of Balmoral, one of the most reserved castles of the British monarchy. Unlike Buckingham or Windsor, Balmoral is not just a real residence. It is a refuge, a private sanctuary of the royal family, where the press has no access and where events occur without public records. Employees sign strict confidentiality contracts, and there are rumors that certain parts of the castle have never been seen by strangers. Alexander himself does not know exactly what to expect, but as he approaches the imposing structure surrounded by the Scottish hills, he feels a different atmosphere, almost oppressive. On the first night, as he walks through the narrow and poorly lit corridors of the castle, he perceives something unsettling, an abnormal silence. Not the natural silence of an isolated place, but forced silence, almost as if something or someone wanted to prevent sounds from spreading. The weak lighting of the old lamps projects strange shadows on the stone walls, and Alexander feels that he is being observed, even without seeing anyone. The first track comes in a file room. Between common records of royal reforms and visits, he finds a sealed envelope without date or name. His research colleague, who also obtained access to the castle, looks at him with nervousness. "Are you sure you want to open this?" whisper. Within the envelope, there is a set of handwritten notes, Latin and Gaelic words mixed with symbols drawn on the fringes of the paper. Among the repeated terms, 3 draw their attention: stone circle, sacrifice, linean. At first, words seem disconnected, but something deep in your mind tells you that these concepts are interconnected with everything you have discovered so far. He then realizes a chilling detail. On the last page of the notes, there is an arms coat of arms, the same used by the British monarchy. With a busy mind and the warning senses, he decides to end the research that night. However, upon returning to his room inside the castle, the feeling of being watched intensifies. Shortly after bedtime, he listens to steps in the hallway. First slow and calculated, then approaching increasingly. Then the steps stop, exactly outside your door. 3 firm beats echo in the absolute silence. Alexander's heart shoots. He holds his breath, not knowing what to expect. The doorknob spins slowly, as if someone tried to enter. For a moment that seems to last eternity, he wonders if he must lift and confront who is on the other side. But before you can react, the steps start over, this time moving away. The next morning, he finds an anonymous note under his door. Just one sentence: "Don't move what is buried." But it was too late. He had begun to dig up Balmoral's secrets, and someone wanted to keep him from continuing. The nights in Balmoral became more tense for Alexander Graves. He knew he was close to something big, something that should not be discovered, but the questions that surrounded his mind did not allow him to stop. What did the British monarchy try to hide? And why so many references to symbols and rituals in the documents you found? The answer began to draw when Alexander got a confidential meeting with a former Buckingham Palace employee. The man, who preferred to be called Elliot only, agreed to speak of a discreet pub in London as long as his identity was protected. His eyes were always restless, analyzing the environment around before saying anything. When he finally broke the silence, his first sentence was as enigmatic as worrying. Coronation is not just a political or religious event, it is a ritual, and a much older ritual than the monarchy itself. Elliot slid a small envelope on the table. Inside, there were detailed photographs of the items used during the coronation of a British monarch. The scepter, the crown, and the orb, all symbols that the world has seen countless times, but which, according to the notes that accompanied the images, kept hidden meanings. The royal scepter, for example, which was always described as an authority symbol, had an almost imperceptible detail in its base, a recording that resembled the square and compass, the classic emblems of Freemasonry. The royal orb, ensured by the monarchs during the coronation, would represent the dominance of the church over the world. But according to Eliot's documents, their shape and the surface sculpted standards referred to a Celtic ritualistic object, used centuries before the consolidation of Christianity in Europe. What most intrigued Alexander, however, was an item that never appeared in the ceremony television broadcasts: the Stone of Destiny, Stone of Scone, used for centuries to crown the British kings. Reports indicated that the stone was much more than a historical artifact. Some theories suggested that it was an energy plumbing, an object of power used to seal hidden pacts. Eliot then pointed to a crucial detail: the only moment of the coronation that is never filmed, the king's sacred anointing, made at closed doors and without transmission to the public. "You already wondered why?" Eliot asked as he held the whiskey glass. In the coronation of Elizabeth II in 1953, the cameras were turned off right now, and the same happened with Charles III. Do you really think this is by chance? Alexander felt a chill. If only part of what Eliot said was true, then the British monarchy was not just a traditional institution. It could be a key piece within something much larger, an invisible power network supported by rituals and symbols that few understood. But there was still a question. Were these secret practices just traditions maintained over the centuries? Or were they part of something much deeper and more dangerous? Something that could be shaping the destinations of nations without anyone noticing? Among all the stories involving the British monarchy, one of the most disturbing is undoubtedly the death of Princess Diana. Officially, the tragedy that occurred on the night of August 31st, 1997, was a car accident at the Ponte de Lama tunnel in Paris. However, since then, numerous theories have emerged, wondering if this version is really the complete truth. During his investigations, Alexander Graves spoke with an investigative journalist named Alexander Monroe, who dedicated years of his career to understand the backstage of this case. His words were direct and alarming. Diana didn't die by chance. She knew too much. But what exactly did she know? Diana and her conflict with the monarchy. Since he married the then Prince Charles, Diana has shown discomfort with rigid protocols and the coldness of the royal family. His divorce, made official in 1996, exposed the internal tensions of the monarchy and turned Diana into an independence icon. But there was something even more serious happening behind the scenes. Monroe revealed that Diana had been actively investigating secret crown alliances, as well as obscure financial schemes. She also denounced the control and manipulation that the royal family had on the backstage of British politics. In addition, letters written by Diana before her death suggested that she was afraid. In one of them, later released by a close friend, she wrote, "They are planning my death in a car accident, fault failure, or a violent beat, all so that Charles can get married again." But there was something even more alarming. According to nearby sources, Diana was about to make bombastic revelations to the press about the monarchy's relations with secret societies and illicit financial agreements. Inconsistencies on the night of Diana's death. The events of the night of his death raised several suspicions. The tunnel's security cameras were off at the time of the accident, an unusual coincidence for a high-security area in Paris. The rescuers took more than 40 minutes to remove her from the car, even though she is still alive. The driver, Henri Paul, was declared drunk, but family and close friends said he was not a compulsive drinker. Witnesses said they saw a flash inside the tunnel seconds before the accident, suggesting that something else happened. For Monroe, the event sequence indicated a carefully planned and disguised murder. Diana's silence. Diana's death not only shocked the world, but also prevented crucial information from coming to light. Monroe believes that if Diana had had time to publicize what she knew, the monarchy would have suffered one of the greatest scandals in her history. The question that remains is, who orchestrated this tragedy? Would it have been an internal plan of the monarchy to protect its secrets? Or would it be even more powerful forces that could not allow a public figure like Diana to expose the actual functioning of the system. What is clear to Alexander Graves is that Diana's death was much more than a simple accident. It was a warning, a reminder that those who dare challenge certain structures pay a high price. And perhaps following investigating, he was approaching a dangerous limit. The history of the British monarchy is full of controversial events, but few scandals have shaken both the foundations of British power and the Perfio case in 1961. Officially treated as a political and sexual scandal, this episode revealed much more than betrayals and power games. He exposed obscure connections between the ruler elite and networks that operated in the shadows. During his investigations, Alexander Graves found forgotten documents in a Windsor file room. Covered with dust, these records seemed to have been purposely aside. But when he began to analyze them, he realized that the profuse scandal was not just a case of infidelity. It was a game of power, spying, and possibly manipulation of the monarchy itself. The perfume case, a scandal at first glance. John Profumo, then Secretary of State for the United Kingdom War, was a respected figure in British politics. However, everything collapsed when it came to light that he kept an extramarital affair with Christine Keeler, a young model wrapped with elite circles. What made this relationship even more delicate was the fact that Keeler was also linked to a Soviet Union diplomat. In the middle of the Cold War, this was not just a personal problem, but a matter of national security. The revelation of Keeler's double relationship generated accusations of espionage and placed the monarchy in a delicate position. The involvement of the monarchy. Although officially the scandal was treated as a political problem, the documents found by Alexander suggested something much deeper. The monarchy not only followed the case closely, but had a lot to lose if the investigation were too far away. This is because Keeler was not just an attractive model. It circulated between ministers, members of the nobility, and even figures of the royal family itself. Some sources indicate that members of the monarchy were present at private parties organized by figures involved in the scandal, which could explain the Crown's rush to drown out the case. Alexander also found reports of secret meetings between advisors to Buckingham Palace and politicians of the time, in which he was discussed how to prevent the scandal from reaching the monarchy. British intelligence documents indicate that key witnesses were pressured and documents were taken from the official records. What did that mean? That perhaps Parfum was just the tip of the iceberg, a political sacrifice to hide something bigger. Silence and disappearance of evidence. The consequences of the case were fast and brutal. Parfum renounced office and moved away from public life. Christine Keeler was discredited and treated as an opportunistic model, diverting the focus from the political connections of the case. Some of the people involved died in strange circumstances or disappeared from the spotlight. The monarchy came out unharmed, but Alexander knew it didn't mean it was clean. The speed with which the scandal was drowned out in efforts to protect royalty indicated that the real story of the case was never fully revealed. The real reason for stuffing the case? For Alexander, a question remained unanswered. Why did the British monarchy worry so much about this scandal? One of the most unsettling hypotheses is that the Profumo case exposed an invisible power network that connects politics, monarchy, and secret societies. If the investigation had gone beyond the relationship between Perfio and Keeler, perhaps even more dangerous secrets came up. The official history says that the scandal was just a mistake of judgment of an influential politician. But was Perfio just a pawn in a larger game? And if this is true, how many other scandals may have been drowned throughout history to protect the interests of the monarchy and its hidden allies? The summer of 1979 marked one of the most tragic and enigmatic moments of the British monarchy. Lord Mountbatten, Prince Philip's uncle, and one of the most influential figures in the royal family, was murdered in an explosion aboard his boat on the Northern Ireland coast. The attack was rapidly attributed to the Irish Republican Army, RAF, but as Alexander Graves advanced in his investigation, he realized that this official explanation hid deeper layers. Mountbatten was not just a nobleman with direct ties with the monarchy. He was a military strategist, a diplomat, and someone who knew too much about the backstage of the royal family and his relationship with global forces. And that made him a dangerous target. What did Mountbatten know? In investigating old documents and reports from anonymous sources, Alexander found something worrying. Lord Mountbatten was involved in research and private investigations into the monarchy's financial and political secrets. Among the findings he was about to make public, some stood out. The British monarchy had secret financial connections with large international corporations and banks. There were evidence that royal members were linked to a global network of influence, which included secret societies and unveiled political agreements. He knew about internal scandals that could compromise the image of the crown. Mountbatten also kept in touch with high-ranking figures within the British government and other global powers. Some theorists believe he was close to exposing compromising documents, which would have sealed his destination. The attack and its inconsistencies. The Wrath assumed the authorship of the attack shortly thereafter, claiming that Mountbatten was a symbol of the British occupation in Northern Ireland. However, some details raised suspicions. The explosive used in the attack was of an unusual level of sophistication, suggesting involvement of more influential groups than anger. The operation was meticulously planned, indicating that the murder was not just a political retaliation, but a carefully executed action. The British Secret Service, MI5, received a warning of a threat against Mountbatten weeks before the attack, but no protection measure was taken. If British intelligence knew the risk, why did you do nothing to stop it? Elimination of a weak link? An unsettling theory suggests that Mountbatten was eliminated not only for being a target of anger, but because he knew too much about the backstage of power. His studies on the monarchy and its international connections could have led to bombastic revelations. The explosion that took his life may have been a clear warning to anyone who dared to question the hidden structures that kept the power of royalty. The hidden message behind Mountbatten's death. Mountbatten's murder sent a silent message, but of course, even a member of the royal family was not above the rules of the game. If he, one of the most influential men in the crown circle, could be removed from the scene so brutally, who else could be at risk? Alexander Graves knew that continuing this investigation meant challenging powerful interests, but the truth behind Mountbatten's death seemed much bigger than anyone imagined. The problem was, how far could this truth go before someone decided it was too dangerous to continue? After deeply plunging into confidential documents, hidden testimonies, and historical events surrounded by mystery, Alexander Graves came to a disturbing conclusion. The British monarchy is not just a symbol of tradition and power. She seems to be at the center of a network of secrets, rituals, and hidden alliances that influence the world in ways few imagine. The patterns discovered in Balmoral, the codes hidden in royal genealogy, the confidential rituals in the coronations, and the stuffy scandals over the centuries point to something larger. An invisible force operating in the shadows, where monarchy is not just a political actor, but a piece in a much older game. Diana's death, the Perfumo case, the murder of Lord Mountbatten, all these events officially treated as isolated incidents actually carry signs of a larger strategy, protecting power at any cost. But the big question remains, protect from whom? Was the monarchy just a facade for something even darker? Who really controls global destinations, while the world focuses only on the brightness of the crowns and scandals that are allowed to surface? Alexander Graves knew that continuing could have consequences. However, one thing was certain. The more he discovered, the clearer that the most important truths in the world are not just hidden, they are protected by those who would do everything to keep them buried. Now it is up to each one to decide, what do you really believe about power?